People think wedding days start with joy. They don't. They start with pressure. I woke up before my alarm, the same way I used to when Daniel was a boy and needed breakfast before school. My eyes opened to the dark ceiling, and for a few seconds I let myself pretend this was just another morning, another quiet house, another list of responsibilities waiting for me to handle without complaint. The old clock in the hallway struck 5. I lay there listening to it echo through the house, this house, built by my husband's grandfather, nearly lost by my husband's bad investments, and saved by my own 2 hands after he died. A house people in town whispered about with that particular tone Midwesterners reserve for wealth they didn't earn themselves. They never saw the nights I slept on the office couch. They never saw the ledgers stained with coffee and tears. They never saw me choosing which bills could wait so Daniel could eat. Today was my son's wedding day. I pushed myself out of bed and wrapped my robe tight, padding barefoot toward the bathroom. The floor was cold, but I welcomed it. It reminded me I was awake, grounded, real. I flicked on the light, and the world tilted. For a split second, I didn't understand what I was seeing. My reflection looked wrong in a way my brain couldn't process fast enough. I leaned closer to the mirror, squinting, lifting a hand. The hand touched skin, not hair. Skin. Smooth, raw, tender. My scalp felt like it felt the day Daniel fell off his bike and scraped his knee, burning, angry, alive with pain. I stared at myself until my vision blurred. Someone had shaved my head. Not unevenly, not carelessly. This was deliberate, clean, methodical. Every strand gone, right down to the scalp. Whoever did it knew what they were doing. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I sat down slowly on the closed toilet lid because my legs stopped trusting me. That's when I noticed the smell. Antiseptic. Metal. The faint electric tang of clippers. I turned and saw the envelope on my pillow. Cream-colored paper. Thick. Expensive. The kind of stationery you buy when you want to look refined while saying something ugly. The handwriting was neat, feminine, confident. Some styles are better left in the past. Hope today teaches you that. No name, no signature. There didn't need to be one. Vanessa Moore had never bothered hiding her contempt for me. She just dressed it up in smiles and compliments that landed like small, precise cuts. I folded the note carefully and set it on the dresser. Then I stood up. 36 years earlier, I stood beside a hospital bed, holding my husband's cold hand while a doctor explained words I already understood. Sudden, massive, nothing we could do. Daniel had been 10 years old, too young to understand why his father wasn't coming home, too old not to feel the hole it left. That night, after everyone went home and the casseroles started piling up in the kitchen, I made a promise to myself. My son would never feel unsafe. Not financially, not emotionally, not in this world. I kept that promise, and somewhere along the way, it cost me more than I realized. I walked into my closet and slid aside the false panel behind my winter coats. The safe waited there, heavy and familiar. I spun the dial and pulled the door open. Inside sat the envelope, the wedding gift, the reason my stomach had been in knots for weeks. I had told myself it was generosity, a mother's final contribution to her child's future. What it really was, though I hadn't admitted it until now, was leverage, insurance, a way to keep myself relevant in Daniel's life after Vanessa took center stage. The amount was obscene by most standards. By mine, it represented decades of risk, sacrifice, and swallowed pride. I lifted the envelope and felt the weight of it in my hands. Then I slid it back into the safe and shut the door. The sound of the lock turning felt louder than it should have. Final. I picked up the phone and dialed the one number I trusted to understand urgency without explanation. Michael Adler, my attorney answered. "Cancel everything," I said. "Every transfer, every signature." There was a pause. "Eleanor?" "I'll explain later," I said. "Come by tonight. Bring the will." Another pause, heavier this time. "All right." I hung up and exhaled for the first time since waking. The knock on the door came not long after. My stylist, God bless her, didn't ask questions. She took one look at my head and said softly, "We can fix the appearance." She couldn't fix the insult or the intent behind it. But the wig she fit an hour later was convincing enough to keep the whispers at bay. Soft silver, styled just the way I liked it. Familiar. Safe. Before leaving the house, I slipped a small recorder into my purse. I learned long ago that truth without proof is just noise. The drive to the church cut through neighborhoods where everything looked serene. Snow-dusted lawns, brick homes passed down like heirlooms, families who waved because they recognized my car and what it represented. No one waved back to the woman I felt like inside. Inside the church, stained glass filtered winter light into colors that danced across polished pews. People greeted me warmly, complimented my dress, told me how proud I must be. I smiled and thanked them. Then I heard Daniel's voice, low, urgent, not meant to carry. I turned slightly and saw him standing near a stone column, phone pressed to his ear, shoulders tense. "Not now," he whispered. "Just wait." I stayed still. "After today, it won't matter," he said. "Once the paperwork's done, we're free." My fingers tightened around my purse strap. "She'll do it," he added with a quiet laugh. "She always does." The recorder hummed softly. When he ended the call and turned, he saw me and froze for half a second, just long enough for guilt to flicker across his face. Then he smiled. "Mom," he said, leaning down to kiss my cheek, "you okay?" I looked at my son, at the man I had protected from consequences his entire life. "I'm fine," I said. It was the first lie I told that day. The music began. Guests rose. Vanessa appeared at the back of the church in white, glowing with confidence. She walked like someone who believed the room belonged to her, and maybe she thought it did. As the ceremony unfolded, I didn't cry like the other mothers. I didn't clasp my hands in prayer. I listened. I watched. I remembered. Every request Daniel had made without asking, every time Vanessa corrected me in my own home, every moment I told myself love meant enduring discomfort. By the time the vows ended, something inside me had settled. I wasn't angry. I was done. I didn't yet know that before the reception ended, I would hear my son confess plans that made the shaved head feel like a warning, not an attack. I didn't know his bride had already decided where my money and my future belonged. But I knew this much as I rose from that pew. They thought the worst was already done to me. They had no idea what I was about to survive and what I would take back.
People think betrayal arrives with drama. Shouting, slamming doors, tears spilling in public places. They're wrong. Most betrayals whisper. They happen in hallways, in half-finished sentences, in voices lowered because the speaker believes no one important is listening. I returned to my seat after the vows, like a woman carrying a secret too heavy to share. My hands rested in my lap, folded neatly, while inside my chest, something kept tightening, like a knot being pulled slow and deliberate. Applause broke out around me, smiles, cameras flashing. Guests leaned toward one another to comment on the dress, the flowers, how handsome Daniel looked. I nodded when expected, smiled when prompted. No one noticed that I wasn't clapping. I told myself to stay where I was, to let the ceremony end, to breathe through it. But something tugged at me, a pull I'd learned to trust long ago, back when ignoring it cost me contracts and sleep. Instinct doesn't shout, it nudges. When the aisle cleared and people began standing, I slipped out through a side door under the excuse of fresh air. The hallway beyond the sanctuary was quiet, lined with framed photographs of past weddings, generations smiling into the same lens, repeating the same promises. I moved slowly, my heels soft against the carpet. That's when I heard Daniel again. His voice carried from the far end of the corridor, strained and impatient. "I said don't come here. You're not supposed to be anywhere near this place today," he hissed. A woman's voice answered, low, sharp, unfamiliar in tone, but not in presence. "I'm tired of waiting. You promised this would be done by now." Hannah Reed. I recognized her immediately, though I'd only met her twice before. Daniel's assistant. Young, efficient, always polite in that professional way that keeps people from asking questions. My stomach dropped, but my hands stayed steady. "Just give me a few more hours," Daniel said. "Once the transfer clears, we won't have to hide anymore. We'll be set." My breath caught. "I don't want excuses. I want results." "You'll get them," he said quickly. "She won't say no. She never does." There it was again, that certainty, that casual dismissal of me as a sure thing, a signature, a resource, a means to an end. "And Vanessa?" Hannah asked. Daniel scoffed softly. "She's temporary." I felt something cold slide through my chest. "This wedding is just optics," he continued. "Once the money's in, I'll figure out the timing. Clean exit, no mess." "No mess," Hannah repeated. "You sure?" "I always clean up my own messes," Daniel said. "Just trust me." I pressed my lips together to keep from making a sound. The recorder in my purse vibrated faintly, its red light glowing through the fabric. Daniel's voice dropped even lower. "This is our chance. After today, I won't owe anyone anything." I closed my eyes. After today, after using me one last time. Footsteps approached. I stepped away from the column and pretended to study one of the old photographs on the wall. A bride from the 1950s smiled up at me, hopeful and unaware. Daniel walked past seconds later, adjusting his tie, his face already rearranged into the mask everyone loved. He didn't look at me. I waited until his footsteps faded before I moved again. The reception hall buzzed with energy. Music played softly while staff hurried around setting tables and lighting candles. Vanessa's bridesmaids gathered near the bar, laughing too loudly, already loosening up. I knew that laughter. It wasn't joy, it was anticipation. I slowed my steps as I passed the open door to the bridal suite. Vanessa's voice floated out, bright and confident. "I swear, once this is over, everything finally falls into place." I paused. A bridesmaid laughed. "You really think his mom will hand it over?" Vanessa didn't hesitate. "Of course she will. Women like her need to feel useful." My hand tightened around the edge of the doorframe. "She's been funding his life forever," Vanessa continued. "Why would she stop now? This wedding just seals it." "And then what?" someone asked. Vanessa lowered her voice, but not enough. "Then I take my half," she said calmly. "That's the beauty of marriage." A pause, then a giggle. "And the house?" another voice asked. Vanessa sighed like she was bored. "I've already talked to an attorney. Once the assets are combined, it's simple. She won't have the energy to fight it." Someone joked, "You're cold." Vanessa laughed. "I'm practical." "Honestly," Vanessa outed, "she should be grateful. We'll make sure she's comfortable. Somewhere quiet. Managed." The word managed lingered in the air like smoke. I stepped away before my knees betrayed me. I walked back into the reception hall wearing the same composed expression I'd perfected over decades of board meetings and negotiations. No one stopped me. No one questioned me. Why would they? I was just the mother of the groom. I took my seat at the head table as Daniel and Vanessa entered to cheers and applause. Cameras flashed. Glasses clinked. The illusion was flawless. Daniel leaned over and whispered, "You okay, Mom?" I looked at him and wondered when he'd learned to lie so smoothly. "I'm proud of you," I said, just not in the way he thought. Dinner passed in a blur. Toasts were made, stories told. People laughed and dabbed at their eyes. Vanessa's father spoke about love. Daniel's friends talked about loyalty. I listened to every word like it was evidence. When the MC announced that I'd be giving a speech later, Daniel's eyes lit up. Vanessa's smile widened. They thought they knew what was coming. I sat there sipping water, feeling strangely calm. I had spent my life preparing for moments like this, moments when the room expected something from me: approval, support, money, silence. They didn't realize that for the first time, I wasn't here to give. I was here to decide. As the plates were cleared and the lights dimmed slightly, I reached into my purse and brushed my fingers against the recorder. Still warm, still ready. I thought about the years I'd spent protecting Daniel from consequences, from discomfort, from reality. And I understood something I'd avoided for far too long. Love without boundaries isn't love. It's surrender. The music softened. The MC cleared his throat. "And now," he said warmly, "we'd like to invite Eleanor Price, Daniel's mother, to say a few words." All eyes turned to me. Daniel smiled. Vanessa squeezed his hand. I stood slowly, smoothing my dress. For a heartbeat, the room held its breath. So did I. I hadn't spoken a single word yet, but the truth was already burning a hole through my silence. And as I stepped toward the microphone, I knew this: once I started talking, there would be no going back. Because what I was about to reveal wasn't just about betrayal. It was about who had been lying to whom all along. The microphone felt colder than I expected when my fingers wrapped around it. That surprised me. I'd spoken into plenty of microphones before: shareholder meetings, charity galas, town council hearings, rooms filled with men who assumed I'd be easy to interrupt or dismiss. I'd learned early how to speak without raising my voice, how to hold a room without demanding it. Still, this one felt different. This wasn't business. This was blood. I looked out over the reception hall. Candlelight glowed against white tablecloths and crystal glasses. Faces turned toward me, open and expectant, some smiling, some already emotional, a few phones lifted discreetly, recording what they assumed would be a sentimental moment. Daniel sat front and center, shoulders relaxed, chin lifted with pride. Vanessa leaned into him, her smile practiced and effortless, like she'd already won. I took a breath. "Thank you all for being here," I began, my voice steady. "Seeing so many familiar faces reminds me just how long this family has been rooted in this town." A few people nodded. Someone murmured approval. "I've lived in this house most of my life, and for many years it held just two people, me and my son." Daniel's smile softened. He loved stories where he was the center. "When my husband died suddenly," I said, pausing just long enough for the weight of that sentence to land, "Daniel was still a child, and I made a choice that day. I decided that no matter what it cost me, he would never feel the ground disappear under his feet." I saw a few older women dab at their eyes.
One of Daniel's aunts reached for a tissue. That promise shaped every decision I made, every risk I took, every night I stayed up late balancing numbers instead of sleeping. Vanessa shifted slightly, but her smile held. "I'm proud of the man my son became," I said, looking directly at Daniel now. "I truly am." Daniel straightened, chest lifting. "But pride," I added gently, "doesn't mean blindness." The room quieted, just a notch, just enough. For years, I believed my role was to protect, even when protection turned into permission. I looked at Daniel, really looked at him. "But I won't fund deception, and I won't reward cruelty." Vanessa shook her head wildly. "This is manipulation. She planned this." "Yes," I said simply. "I did." The word landed heavy. I planned to tell the truth, because someone needed to. I picked up my glass of water, took a small sip, then set it down. "The wedding gift I prepared will not be given." A stunned silence. Daniel looked up, eyes wide. "Mom!" "There will be no transfer, no trust, no safety net." Vanessa's mouth opened, then closed, her face flushed deep red. "The money I earned will be used to support people who don't see kindness as weakness." I turned back to the room. "I'm sorry this happened in front of you, but I'm not sorry it happened at all." I stepped away from the microphone. Behind me, chaos broke loose, but I didn't look back. I thought that moment would be the worst. I was wrong, because what happened after I left that room, what my son and his wife tried to do next, forced me to choose between reconciliation and survival. And that choice would cost all of us more than money.
The hallway outside the reception hall felt colder than the winter air outside. My heels echoed against the marble floor as I walked, each step steady, measured. I didn't rush. I didn't look back. Behind me, the celebration had shattered into fragments, raised voices, chairs scraping, the sharp sound of glass breaking somewhere near the bar. But none of it followed me immediately. People were still processing what they'd just witnessed, still replaying my words in their heads, still realizing that the story they thought they were watching had changed right in front of them. I reached the coat check and slipped on my wool coat, hands calm despite the tremor moving through my chest. That tremor wasn't fear. It was release. I'd spent most of my life bracing, anticipating the next demand, the next disappointment, the next moment I'd need to smooth over for Daniel. Now there was nothing left to brace for. The truth was out, loud and irreversible. I was halfway to the exit when I heard footsteps pounding behind me. "Mom!" Daniel's voice cracked through the space like glass underfoot. I stopped, slowly, and turned. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. The tuxedo hung on him like a costume he'd borrowed and forgotten to return. His face was flushed, eyes bloodshot, hair disheveled, as if he'd run his hands through it too many times already. "Please," he said, grabbing my arm, "don't do this, not today." I looked down at his hand on my sleeve. "Let go," I said quietly. He didn't. "I know it looked bad," he rushed on, "but you don't understand. It wasn't serious. I didn't mean it the way it sounded." I gently removed his fingers from my arm. "I understood perfectly," I said. He swallowed hard. "You humiliated me." I studied his face, the familiar shape of it, the eyes I'd watched learn to read, to lie, to charm. "No," I said. "I told the truth." "That's not the same thing," he snapped. "Sometimes," I replied, "it's worse." His shoulders sagged. For a moment, I saw the boy he used to be, the one who crawled into my bed after nightmares, the one who cried when his first girlfriend broke up with him. Then his jaw tightened.
"You had no right," he said. "You could have handled this privately." "I tried private for years. It didn't work." He shook his head. "Vanessa's family, this town, do you have any idea what this does to me?" "Yes," I said calmly. "I do." "Then why?" he demanded. "Because you stopped seeing me as a person," I thought. But I didn't say that. Instead, I said, "Because today was the first time you couldn't talk over me." His mouth opened, then closed. Behind him, the doors to the reception hall burst open. Vanessa stormed out, her white dress rumpled, makeup streaked at the corners of her eyes. The perfect bride had vanished. What remained was fury. "You planned this," she hissed, pointing at me. "You set us up." I looked at her steadily. "You set yourself up." She laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. "You think people are going to believe you over us?" "They already did," I said. Daniel turned on her. "Why didn't you tell me you talked to a lawyer?" Her eyes snapped to his. "Why didn't you tell me she was recording?" The silence between them crackled. I stepped back. "This isn't my argument," I said. "It's yours." Vanessa spun toward me again. "You ruined everything." "No," I said. "You revealed it." She lunged at me, but Daniel caught her arm. "Stop," he snapped. "This isn't helping." She wrenched free. "Helping? I just lost everything because of her." Daniel stared at her. "Because of you." For the first time, Vanessa looked afraid. I turned away. Outside, the cold air hit my face hard, sharp enough to sting. Snowflakes drifted lazily from the sky, indifferent to human drama. The parking lot lights cast long shadows across the pavement. My car waited at the edge of the lot. I was almost there when Daniel's voice came again, quieter now. "Mom, don't abandon me." I stopped, my hand on the car door. I didn't turn around. "I'm not abandoning you. I'm stepping out of the role you trapped me in." Silence. "You're still my son. That doesn't change." He took a shaky breath. "Then help me fix this." I turned then. "Help me." The words echoed in my head, layered with decades of meaning. Help me pay. Help me smooth this over. Help me clean up. Help me avoid consequences. I can't fix what I didn't break, and I won't protect you from the truth anymore. His face crumpled. "Go inside," I added. "Deal with what you chose." I got into the car and closed the door. As we pulled away, I watched the building shrink in the rearview mirror. The lights, the chaos, the night that was supposed to celebrate beginnings. At home, the house greeted me with stillness, the kind that presses against your ears after a storm. I hung my coat, kicked off my shoes, and stood in the foyer for a long moment, letting the quiet settle. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You think this is over?" I stared at the screen. Then another message arrived. This one from Daniel. "Please, just talk to me." I set the phone down without replying. The doorbell rang 20 minutes later. I knew who it was before I opened it. Michael Adler stood on my porch, coat buttoned tight, briefcase in hand. He took one look at my face and nodded. "Rough night," he said. "Yes," I replied. "Productive, though." We sat at the dining room table where I had signed countless documents over the years. He spread papers out carefully, methodically, the way he always did. "I assume you're serious," he said. "I'm never more serious," I answered. He slid the will toward me. "We can revise everything. Trusts, beneficiaries, timelines." I picked up a pen. "Daniel stays in," I said slowly, "but with conditions." "Conditions?" He raised an eyebrow. "Boundaries," I corrected. "Accountability. No access without responsibility." He nodded. "That's unusual." "So is tonight," I said. We worked for hours, clause by clause, line by line. The old safety nets were replaced with clear terms. No blank checks, no assumptions. When I finally signed the last page, my hand didn't shake.
Michael gathered the papers. "You did the right thing," he said quietly. I didn't answer right away. "I did what I had to," I said finally. After he left, I poured myself a cup of tea and sat by the window. Snow had begun to fall harder now, covering tire tracks, smoothing the ground clean. My phone buzzed again. A voicemail from Vanessa this time, her voice shrill, furious, unraveling. I deleted it without listening to the end. For the first time in years, I felt tired in a way that didn't scare me. Not exhausted, finished. But even as I sat there, wrapped in quiet, I knew this wasn't the end. Truth has consequences, and consequences don't arrive all at once. They come in waves, and the next one was already forming. I thought rewriting the will would bring closure. I was wrong. Because within days, Daniel would come to my door, not as my son, but as a man desperate to regain control, and the choice I made then would decide whether reconciliation was possible or whether some lines, once crossed, can never be redrawn.
People think the hardest part is the confrontation. It isn't. The hardest part comes after, when the adrenaline fades, when the crowd disperses, and when you're left alone with the consequences echoing through empty rooms. The morning after the wedding that wasn't, I woke up before dawn again. Not because I wanted to, but because my body didn't trust sleep anymore. The house felt different. Not haunted, just aware. Like it was watching me the same way I used to watch Daniel when he was a baby. Quietly, attentively, waiting to see what would happen next. I sat at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee growing cold between my hands and stared out the window at the frost clinging to the hedges. The yard looked untouched, pristine, like nothing had happened the night before. My phone sat face down beside me. I hadn't turned it on yet. That was deliberate. For years, the first thing I did every morning was check messages. Daniel's name had trained me like a reflex. A call, a text, a need. Even when he was grown, even when he lived under a different roof, my nervous system stayed tuned to him. That morning, I chose silence. When I finally flipped the phone over, it lit up like a warning sign. Missed calls, voicemails, messages stacked on top of each other until the screen could barely contain them. Daniel, Vanessa, unknown numbers I assumed belonged to relatives, friends, people who suddenly felt entitled to an opinion. I didn't open any of them. Instead, I stood, rinsed my mug, and went upstairs. The mirror in my bedroom caught my reflection as I passed. Without the wig, my head looked unfamiliar, but not ugly. The skin was still tender, the regrowth just beginning to show like a shadow. I studied myself longer than usual. I didn't look broken. I looked exposed. There's a difference. Around mid-morning, the doorbell rang. I knew it wouldn't be a neighbor. I opened the door to find Daniel standing on the porch, shoulders hunched, eyes rimmed red, hair uncombed. He looked like he hadn't slept, or showered, or thought very far beyond the next sentence he planned to say. "Mom," he said, relief flooding his face when he saw me. "Thank God." I didn't step aside. "What do you want?" I asked calmly. He blinked, thrown by the question. I need to talk to you." "About what?" I asked. He swallowed. "About last night." I nodded. "Then talk." "Not here," his eyes said, "not on the porch, not like this." But I didn't move. "I messed up," he said finally. "I know that." I waited. "And Vanessa, she escalated things. She shouldn't have said what she did." I raised an eyebrow. "Which part?" He flinched. "She's under a lot of pressure," continued quickly. "Her parents are furious. People are calling. The whole thing got out of control." "And?" I prompted. "And you didn't have to do it that way," he said, his voice tightening. "You could have talked to me privately." I studied him in the quiet. "When?" I asked. He hesitated. Before the wedding, when I tried to speak to you about boundaries, when you laughed it off, or the morning of, when you were busy planning how to leave your wife once you had my money? His face drained of color. That wasn't... Don't, I said softly. Don't insult me now. He looked down at his hands. I didn't think you'd actually cut me off, he admitted. There it was. Not remorse. Assumption. I didn't cut you off, I said. I cut off access. He looked up sharply. That's the same thing. No, I replied. It isn't. I stepped back then and opened the door wider. Come in, I said. We're not doing this on the porch. He followed me inside like a child entering the principal's office. We sat at opposite ends of the dining table, the space between us heavy with everything unsaid. I rewrote the will, I said without preamble. His shoulders stiffened. You're still included, but not the way you were before. His jaw tightened. So there are conditions. Yes. Like what? He demanded. Like accountability, like proof you can stand on your own, like no access to funds without independent income and financial counseling. He scoffed. You're punishing me. No, I'm parenting you, for the first time in years. His laugh was short and bitter. You think this makes you strong? I met his gaze. I think this makes me honest. He stood abruptly, pacing. You humiliated me in front of everyone. My marriage is already falling apart. I folded my hands. That marriage was built on deception. I didn't create that. She's threatening legal action, he added. I nodded once. I expected that. You're not scared? He asked, incredulously. I spent decades negotiating contracts that could have ruined this family. I'm not scared of someone who mistakes leverage for power. He stopped pacing. So that's it? You're just different now? I considered the question. No, I said slowly. I'm the same woman. I just stopped apologizing for it. He sank back into his chair, defeated. What am I supposed to do? He asked quietly. The question was different this time, less entitled, more afraid. You figure it out, I said gently, the way I did. He looked up, eyes wet. You're my mother. Yes, and because of that, I won't save you from yourself anymore. Silence settled between us. After a moment, he nodded once. I don't know how to do this without you. That's the point. You learn. He left not long after. No yelling, no promises, just quiet resignation. That night, Vanessa's lawyer sent a letter. Threats, claims, accusations dressed up in legal language. Michael Adler handled it with one phone call. By the end of the week, the town had chosen its version of the story. Some saw me as cold. Others called me brave. Most didn't know what to think. I didn't correct them, because the real work wasn't happening out there. It was happening in the space where guilt used to live. I thought the hardest boundary would be saying no to money. I was wrong. The hardest boundary came weeks later, when my son returned not with demands, but with something far more dangerous: regret. And I had to decide whether regret was enough, or whether trust, once broken, demands a longer road back.
Regret doesn't announce itself the way anger does. Anger slams doors. Regret stands outside them. Weeks passed after the wedding, and the house settled into a rhythm that felt unfamiliar but steady. No frantic calls, no surprise drop-ins, no last-minute requests dressed up as emergencies. At first, the silence felt like punishment. Then it began to feel like peace. I started sleeping through the night again, not perfectly,
Old habits don't disappear just because you ask them to, but enough that I woke without that familiar tightness in my chest. The house no longer felt like a place I was maintaining for someone else. It felt like mine. I reorganized rooms I hadn't touched in years, old files, old photos, old expectations I'd carried like heirlooms I never wanted but couldn't throw away. Daniel didn't contact me for nearly 3 weeks. When he finally did, it wasn't a call. It was a letter, a real one, paper, handwritten, no emojis, no shortcuts. That alone made my hands pause when I pulled it from the mailbox. I sat at the kitchen table and opened it slowly, like the words inside might bruise if handled too fast. Mom, I don't know how to talk to you anymore, so I'm writing instead. I exhaled. He wrote about the fallout, about the wedding dissolving into rumors and awkward explanations, about Vanessa moving out of the apartment they'd planned to share, about Hannah Reed quitting her job and disappearing from his life as quickly as she'd entered it. He didn't excuse himself. That was new. I'm not asking you to fix anything, the letter said. I'm trying to understand how I became someone you had to protect yourself from. That line stopped me. He wrote about money, how he'd never learned to live without it, how he'd assumed it would always be there like gravity. He wrote about fear, too. Fear of being ordinary. Fear of failing without a cushion. I think I confused your love with insulation, he wrote, and I don't know who I am without it. I folded the letter and stared out the window for a long time. Regret can be manipulative. I knew that. Tears don't equal change. Words don't either. But effort leaves fingerprints. I didn't respond right away. That was deliberate. A week later, Daniel knocked on my door. He looked different. Not just thinner, not just tired. Quieter, like someone who'd finally heard himself speak and didn't like the sound. I won't stay long, he said when I opened the door. I just wanted to tell you something. I nodded and stepped aside. He didn't sit, just stood in the living room, hands clasped in front of him like he was waiting for permission to exist there. I sold the car, he said. I raised an eyebrow. The one you helped me buy, he added, quickly. I bought a used one, nothing fancy. I didn't comment. I took a contract job, temporary, consulting, no guarantees. I waited. And I started meeting with a financial counselor, on my own. I'm paying for it. That mattered more than he knew. I'm not telling you this so you'll change your mind, he said. I just want you to know I'm trying. Trying. Not demanding, not negotiating, not assuming. I looked at my son, the man standing where a boy used to, and felt something loosen in my chest. I believe you, I said. His shoulders sagged with relief. That's all I needed to hear. He moved toward the door, then stopped. Can I ask you something? He said quietly. Yes. Do you hate me? The question cut deeper than any accusation. I shook my head slowly. No, I hated the version of you that treated me like an object. He nodded. I hated him too. After he left, I cried. Not because I felt weak, because I finally felt safe enough to. Boundaries don't erase love. They clarify it. Vanessa tried one last move a month later. Not legal, social. She reached out to distant relatives, telling a version of the story where she was blindsided, where I was controlling, vindictive, manipulative. Old money towns thrive on whispers. I didn't counter them. I didn't need to. The people who mattered had already seen enough. Michael Adler confirmed her legal threats were dissolving under scrutiny. No standing, no leverage, no appetite for a public fight she was likely to lose. She's looking for a settlement, he told me over the phone. There isn't one. I replied. He smiled through the line. I thought you'd say that. As spring crept in, the house filled with light again. I found myself lingering in rooms instead of passing through them, reading books I'd bought years ago and never opened, taking walks without checking my phone. One afternoon, I stood in front of the mirror and removed the wig. My hair had grown back unevenly, soft and stubborn, silver mixed with darker strands I didn't remember having. I smiled at my reflection. This time, I recognized the woman looking back. Daniel and I met for coffee a few weeks later. Public place, neutral ground, his suggestion. We talked about small things, work, the weather, the town's gossip cycle. Then he cleared his throat. I don't expect things to go back to the way they were. I don't want them to. I nodded. Good. But I do want a relationship. A real one. So do I. On new terms. He smiled. A genuine one. Not polished. Not rehearsed. I think I finally understand what you gave up for me, he said, and I don't want to take from you anymore. I believed him. But belief, like trust, is earned in installments. As we parted, he hesitated. I'm proud of you, he said. The words landed softly. I'm proud of you, too, for staying when it would have been easier to disappear. That night, I slept without dreams. I thought reconciliation meant returning to what we were. I was wrong, because just when I began to trust the quiet, life presented a final test, one that would ask whether my boundaries were real, or whether they only held when things were easy. And this time, the choice wouldn't be about money at all.
Time does a strange thing after betrayal. At first, it rushes. Days blur together, filled with noise, opinions, and other people's reactions. Then suddenly, without warning, it stretches. Long, quiet, honest. Weeks passed after Daniel's visit. The house settled into a new rhythm, one that didn't revolve around anticipating someone else's needs. I woke when my body told me to, not when obligation demanded it. I ate when I was hungry. I slept without bracing for the sound of my phone. That alone felt revolutionary. The town, meanwhile, never fully let it go. At the grocery store, conversations paused when I reached the end of an aisle. At church, people hugged me a little tighter or avoided my eyes altogether. Midwest politeness has a way of disguising judgment as concern. You doing okay? They'd ask. I always answered the same way. I'm standing. And I was. Vanessa disappeared first. No dramatic exit, no public meltdown, just a quiet vanishing act. Her parents sold the house they'd bought her temporarily. Word traveled that she'd moved out of state. Some said she took a job. Others said she was laying low. I didn't care which version was true. Daniel stayed. Not in the marriage, that unraveled quickly, but in town. I heard bits and pieces through channels I hadn't realized were still open to me. He'd taken a small apartment, sold his newer car, started showing up to work earlier than usual. At first, I didn't read much into it. Then, one afternoon, Michael Adler called. He hasn't contacted me. Not once, Michael said. That caught my attention. For what? I asked. For money, for loopholes, for explanations. I thanked him and hung up. That night, I stood in front of the mirror again. My hair had started to grow back, soft and uneven, like a reminder that time doesn't reverse, but it does move forward. I didn't wear the wig anymore. 2 months after the wedding, Daniel called. Not texted, not emailed, called. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Mom, he said quietly. Yes? A pause, then, can I come over? I closed my eyes for a moment. Why? I asked. I just want to talk.
No, I said gently. You want to be heard. Another pause. Yes, he admitted. I considered it. Tomorrow, I said, at 4. Thank you, he said quickly. I won't be late. He wasn't. When he knocked, I noticed the difference immediately. No rehearsed confidence, no entitlement hiding behind charm. His shoulders were squared but not defensive. His eyes met mine without sliding away. He carried nothing. No folder, no bag, no expectations. We sat in the living room this time, not the dining room. That was intentional. He didn't speak right away. I waited. I've been going to counseling, he said finally. Good, I nodded. For real, he added. Not the kind where you talk until the session ends and then forget it happened. I didn't respond. This wasn't a negotiation. I didn't understand how much I relied on you, not just financially, emotionally, structurally. I folded my hands in my lap. I built my life assuming you'd catch me if I fell. I never learned how to land on my own. That was closer to the truth I'd heard from him in years. I'm not here to ask for anything, he added quickly. I swear. I met his eyes. Then why are you here? He swallowed. To tell you I was wrong, and not in a performative way. The word performative surprised me. I hurt you. I treated your love like a resource instead of a relationship, and I let someone else dehumanize you because it was convenient for me. My chest tightened, but I didn't interrupt. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. I just needed you to know I finally see it. Silence stretched between us. You shaved my head, I said calmly. He flinched. Vanessa did. And you knew she hated me. You heard the way she spoke to me. He nodded, eyes down. You let it happen, I said. Yes, he whispered. I exhaled slowly. I won't pretend that goes away, I said. It changed something fundamental. I know, he replied. That's why I'm not asking you to pretend. That mattered. I'm working 2 jobs, he added after a moment. Not because I have to, but because I need to. I raised my eyebrow slightly. I rented a place I can afford without shortcuts, and I sold the watch. The watch, a graduation gift, expensive, symbolic. I didn't pawn it, I sold it properly, paid off what I owed first. I studied him, searching for cracks, for manipulation. I didn't find any. Why now? I asked. He thought for a moment. Because when everything was taken away, I realized how much of my life was borrowed. I leaned back slightly. I don't know if I deserve a place in your life, he said, but I want to earn one. I stood and walked to the window. Outside, autumn had begun to take hold. Leaves clung stubbornly to branches, some already letting go. I need you to understand something, I said without turning around. Reconciliation isn't a reward. I know, he said. It's a process, and it doesn't erase consequences. I understand. I turned back to him. I'm willing to rebuild, I said slowly, but not the relationship we had before. He nodded immediately. I don't want that one back. That relationship made me smaller, I said. This one will require effort from you. I'm ready, he said. I held his gaze. Then we start with honesty, I said, and distance. Distance? He blinked. Yes, I said. You don't come to me when you fail. You come to me when you've already faced it. He nodded again. And you don't lean, you walk. A tear slipped down his cheek. He didn't wipe it away. I can do that, he said. I believed him. But belief wasn't the same as trust, and trust takes time. I thought that conversation was the turning point. I was wrong again. Because just when I believed we'd found solid ground,
The final truth surfaced, one last revelation that would decide whether reconciliation was possible, or whether love sometimes means letting go, even when both sides are finally ready.
People expect endings to arrive with certainty. A declaration, a hug, a clean line drawn between before and after. Real endings don't work like that. They arrive slowly, disguised as ordinary days. They test you not with drama, but with consistency, with patience, with the question you have to answer over and over again when no one is watching. Am I still choosing myself? The last revelation didn't come from Daniel. It came from paperwork. Michael Adler called me on a Thursday afternoon, his voice measured in the way it gets when he's delivering something he doesn't want to dramatize. "I thought you should know," he said. "Vanessa finalized the divorce filing." I felt no jolt, no spike of emotion, just awareness. "She waived any claim to your assets," he continued. "Her attorney likely advised her it wasn't worth pursuing." "Smart," I said. Michael hesitated. "There's more." I waited. "She also signed a sworn statement acknowledging the recordings were accurate and that the incident in your home was intentional." The shaved head, the note, the humiliation. My fingers tightened briefly around the edge of the table. "Thank you for telling me," I said. After we hung up, I sat quietly for a long time, not reliving it, not savoring vindication, just letting the last loose thread tie itself off. There was a strange peace in knowing I hadn't imagined anything, that my instincts, so long dismissed as overprotective or outdated, had been right all along. Closure doesn't feel like triumph. It feels like clarity. Daniel came by that weekend, as scheduled. We had begun meeting once every 2 weeks, always during the day, always with an end time, always with space between us afterward. Structure mattered. He looked healthier, thinner but steadier. His posture had changed, less defensive, less performative. We sat at the kitchen table this time. "I heard from Michael," he said quietly, "about the filing." I nodded. "I wanted you to know," he continued, "I didn't contest anything. I didn't ask for anything." "I know. That's why I agreed to see you today." He let out a breath he'd been holding. "I'm not here to ask forgiveness," he said. "I don't think that's mine to request." That was new. "What are you here for then?" I asked. "To tell you what I'm doing differently, and to ask if, over time, you'd be willing to see if trust can grow again. Not return, grow." I nodded slightly. "Go on." "I stayed in therapy," he said, "even when it stopped feeling productive, especially then." I didn't comment. "I stopped blaming you," he added, which was harder than blaming myself. That earned a glance. "I realized something uncomfortable," he continued. "I learned to measure love by how much someone gave me, not by how much I respected them." I stayed silent. "I don't want that version of love anymore," he said, "even if it means I lose people." I studied his face. The lines around his eyes were deeper than before, not from age, Daniel wasn't old enough for that, but from consequence. "You don't lose people by respecting them," I said. "You lose access to them when you don't." He nodded. "I know I can't undo what happened, but I can live differently going forward." I leaned back in my chair. "This is the part most people get wrong. Reconciliation isn't about convincing me you've changed." "I know," he said. "It's about sustaining change when it stops being rewarded." He met my gaze. "That's why I didn't come sooner." That mattered more than any apology he could have offered. "I won't be part of your safety net again," I said. "Not financially, not emotionally." "I understand," he replied. And if you ever try to make me small again, I added, this ends permanently. He didn't flinch. I wouldn't risk that. Not now, not ever. We sat there for a moment, the hum of the refrigerator filling the space. Then here's what I'm willing to offer, I said finally. He straightened, listening. A relationship, I continued. Not a rescue, not a replacement for the one you lost. He nodded. Limited contact, honest conversation, no money, no leverage. Yes, he said immediately. And one more thing, I added. He waited. I will never pretend the wedding didn't happen. We don't rewrite history to feel better. I wouldn't ask you to, he said. Good, then we're clear. When he left, I didn't feel relief. I felt alignment. That night, I walked through the house slowly, touching familiar things with new awareness. The staircase rail, the framed photographs I hadn't taken down, but no longer centered my identity around. I stopped in front of the mirror again. My hair had grown back unevenly, silver and soft. I liked it that way. It reminded me that healing isn't symmetrical. I thought about the woman I was before the wedding. The one who mistook endurance for love. The one who believed silence was protection. The one who thought being needed was the same as being valued. She wasn't weak. She was tired. And she deserved rest. Weeks later, Daniel invited me to lunch. Not at my house, not at his. A neutral place, a small diner halfway between us. I agreed. We talked about ordinary things, work, weather, books. No money, no history mining, no manipulation. When we stood to leave, he hugged me, not tightly, not desperately, just present. He said, "I'm glad you came." I said, "So am I," and I meant it. That's how reconciliation really looks. Not fireworks, not forgiveness declarations, but steady behavior over time. Vanessa never contacted me again. I heard she rebuilt her life somewhere else. I wished her no harm, and I also felt no responsibility for her outcome. That chapter closed itself. As for me, I stayed. I stayed in my home. I stayed in my body. I stayed in my truth. The money I didn't give Daniel went where I'd always known it should, into the family business, restructured, modernized, and protected from entitlement, into scholarships, into causes that supported people who didn't confuse generosity with obligation. I didn't disappear. I didn't harden. I didn't become bitter. I became exact. If there's anything I want you to take from my story, it's this. You can love deeply without surrendering yourself. You can forgive without forgetting, and you can set boundaries without losing your humanity. I raised my son alone. That will always be true. But I will not finish my life alone, not because I cling to others, but because I finally learned how to stand, and that changed everything. If you feel comfortable, I'd appreciate it if you left a like on this video. It helps these quiet stories reach the people who might need them most. You can subscribe to the channel if you'd like to hear more stories like this, stories about love, endurance, and the things we carry longer than we should. And if you want to, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I read them, truly. Knowing this story traveled farther than my living room gives me more comfort than you might imagine. Thank you for sitting with me. Take care of yourself, and take care of the people you love.